Hi everyone and welcome to my wormery. Today we're going to be doing a fairly routine feeding on my bins. I've got a couple bins up here. One of them is about 70, 80 days old. The other one's 30 or 40 days old. The two on the bottom there were launched less than a week ago. But before we feed, we're going to take a quick look down here on the bench. We've got 3 bins. The bins have been set up also less than a week ago, 6 days ago, to do what I'm referring to as a finishing stage. By that I mean the larger food bits have all been picked out. For the most part, this would mostly be considered as castings, but not a great deal of effort was made to separate the castings from the worms. So the assumption here is that there are a fair number of worms remaining in the bin who can continue working down the remaining little chunks of leaves and paper and any other little remaining bits that are still in the bin. So we're just going to poke around through it, see how everything looks. Also use that as a chance to aerate it to make sure things don't get too stale, and also just to be able to monitor how things are progressing. They're going to remain in this stage for maybe another month or so before I actually start using the material out in the garden. Here's some worms already. These are surface feeding worms, which most composting worms are. So it's not too surprising to find them working the surface. There's no one place where there's a heavy concentration of food, so I don't think we're going to find large balls of worms the way we've usually seen in most of my bins where there's a particular space where the feeding is happening. Here we're probably going to see just more sort of a general spread out worm population. That is, of course, unless we encounter some sort of a large food bit that I overlooked when I was trying to pick out the larger food items. And you might be wondering, what about the worms? So I did want to wait a little while and encourage the worms to work this small material down into compost. And then at some point in the next couple weeks, I'm going to set up little bait boxes, little boxes that have food in it that are intended to lure the worms out of the material so that the worms can be retained within my worm population and separated from the compost itself. So I like what I'm seeing. The material is really fine. There's really no odor. It's just a neutral, no odor sort of a situation, maybe earthy odor at best. I think I've broken up all of the compressed harder material that I found in the bin. This was the bottom bin. I had these stacked up 3 high. So the other 2 bins that we're going to be checking out next were resting on top of this bin. So the weight of those 2 bins was pressing down, and that might explain why this stuff is a little bit more compacted. So why don't we take a quick peek at the other 2 bins and see how they're progressing. This one also had a bin resting on top of it, so it does feel a bit compressed as well. So here too, I'm just going to use this as an opportunity to dislodge any of the harder chunked up stuff on the bottom, give it a little bit of air. I don't see as many worms in this bin as I did in the previous one. And I wonder why that is. Now, I guess maybe the reason for that is that, the manner in which I populated these bins was by performing a horizontal migration on the bins that the compost came from. And the only explanation I can think of is that the horizontal migration that was happening in the bin that this compost came from was much more successful in luring a larger percentage of worms out of the material into the feeding zone. Here I am starting to encounter a larger concentration of worms than I saw elsewhere, and maybe that's because there was some food material there and that was where they were drawn to. Like here, for example, is the stem of some sort of a plant, or I don't know what, maybe. But maybe that was a clue that there was some food material remaining over here that they were congregating around. Okay, but basically, again, like we determined in the last bin, there's really nothing foul or bad or weird happening here, which was one of the main reasons I wanted to take a peek to see how things are progressing after about a week since I've set this up. All right, good deal. Let's take a peek at this last bin over here. Now here I've got some slightly larger pieces of paper, I believe. The material here is a bit drier. This is the bin that was resting on top of the other two, so it's not as tightly covered or compressed as the other two bins. And the material in this bin has always been a bit drier than in most of my bins, because this is the material that at one point was composting in a shoebox. A lot of people would suggest that this material is a bit too dry and that it's going to potentially cause distress for the worms. I don't know if that's the case or not necessarily, but I don't really intend to do anything in terms of adding moisture or anything like that. I'm going to assume that things are going to be okay in here. Down lower, the material does feel a little bit more damp, so I'm going to consider this as fairly satisfactory status. So I'm going to pack these up, put them back on the shelf, and then we're going to proceed on to feeding the 4 active bins that I've got on the shelf. Okay, next up is my most mature bin, which goes all the way back to the end of February. Let's see, we did feed this one 6 days ago, and this bin actually is still being center fed. I've not yet converted over to edge feeding on any of these bins. So we're going to encounter a variety of different types of food items. These are mango pits. Some of them are whole, such as this one. Other ones have been hacked in half. Here's something we've been tracking for a while now. This is a cork. It's been in the bins for quite some time now. I'm still not seeing much evidence of it being worked down. So I can't remember if it was in these bins that I had thought that it might make good sense to drop in some fresh bedding material during a upcoming feeding, but I can see I've done that already. Yeah, I'm reminded now that I did do that recently. So some of this cardboard or paper that's in here was laid in there to serve that purpose, to be a bedding type material. And I don't know what this is. This might be some sort of, I don't know if it's an organic material or not. It's very tough, stringy stuff. I'm just going to go ahead and grab a handful of the food items that I've prepared for today. Today we've got a mix of different frozen veggies. We've got some banana peels and something we don't do all that often, which is some chestnut out of a package of chestnut that had been long expired from the back of the shelf. I'm sure they're going to love that because chestnut is high sugar content or very sweet type food. So I'm assuming that they're going to enjoy that. And I don't have a lot of food, so I'm not going to go crazy feeding today. I just wanted to drop in a few things to supplement the food supply that's in there now. And then we'll just take all of these existing food scraps that we encountered on the way down and put them back down where they were in the middle. The material in this bin is very nice. Moisture content is pretty good. I'm just going to fluff it all up a little bit, kind of aerate things throughout the bin. Okay, not bad. Now let's check out the next one here. Now this bin is from the end of March, so it's probably in that 6-week-old age range now. And this one has been utilizing some of these cardboard scraps as like an alternate cover, and it's actually been doing a quite nice job on helping retain the moisture within the bin. At some point I had thought that I might just take this stuff and fold it in as fresh bedding material at some point, but until such a time that it seems like I do need it, I'm gonna just keep using it this way as sort of a secondary cover for the material. And by being more moist, it seems like the worms do work the top surface a bit more readily. Here's a cocoon, a fairly dark colored cocoon. I'm usually not very good at spotting the cocoons, but today I guess I just got lucky, noticed one here. This bin seems to be a little bit more active than the last bin that we looked at. And there again, it might be because of the additional moisture that I'm seeing in this bin, which completely makes sense, and it does seem to be consistent with what a lot of people have been saying. I can't tell if this is organic or if it's plastic. For some reason it seems like it might just be some sort of a plastic strap that was used to tie some stuff together. I might actually remove it at this point because I'm suspicious that it might be plastic. Yeah, see, we got a real nice population in this bin. It's much more moist than the other one was. So I'm just wondering if that last bin that we just took a peek at, that oldest bin of mine, could use some sort of boost the moisture. It's looking really good. I don't see many types of bedding materials down here. So maybe bedding, extra bedding at the next feeding would be a good idea in both of these older bins. I definitely like the look of this bin better than the first bin that we looked at there, that older bin of mine. So that older bin of mine might need a little bit of attention next time we come back to it. All right, let's get some delicious food items in here for them. Want to leave enough for the other two bins that we're going to feed. The other two bins are fairly new and we're loaded up pretty generously with food, so they probably don't really need it yet, but I do always like to sort of think ahead and give the bins adequate food. I definitely like the way things are looking in this bin. Very nice. Alright, so I'll cover this one up and then we'll get over to the two new bins. Okay, so like I said, these are my two newest bins now. So this is going to go pretty quick. I don't expect to spend much more time here. I just wanted to get a little bit of food going in here. And I guess just to also check in on them to make sure after their first week of being in service that nothing's going awry and there's no problems creeping out of the woodwork. But I think what I'm seeing here is pretty nice. Everything looks and smells correct, and the moisture levels are nice. There were some dry leaves placed in here in the build of the bin, but there was also a bunch of damp, moist food placed into the bin, melon rinds and things of that nature, as well as dampened cardboard. So the moisture level in this bin feels quite nice. And let's hope we see the same in the last bin. Okay. Now, let's make just a little bit of a divot here to add that last amount of food that we've got remaining. See a big chunk of melon over there still. And here's the last of the food from today's feeding supply. Let's spread it out a little bit and cover up. All right. Well, I definitely like what I'm seeing here. Things are looking quite nice in these two new bins. No reason for concern or fixing of anything. So I think that's it for today. All right, well, like I said, I've got some errands to run, so I'll clean up here really quick so I can get out of here. But if you enjoyed the video, then please give it a thumbs up. I always appreciate that, and consider subscribing to my channel. And thanks again for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.